did this get started? We're talking about relationships.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like...
This started with, well, we had a conversation about this.
Relationships in a very broad context.
Yeah. We were talking about specifically monogamy and the expectation of monogamy in relationships. Or the hierarchy of relationships. Why is there a hierarchy of relationships? Like, why is your...
Like, certain relationships are more important.
Right, like, why is your spouse more important than your best friend on a hierarchical...
For example...
You know what I mean? Like, that's how most people kind of see it, is like...
Or
like blood family versus non-blood. Like, there's always, like, the thought that, like, even they're family, so you should always stick up for them. But, like, why is that the case? So that's the overarching theme.
This started because on Love is Blind.
Oh, that show.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen it, Alex?
I've seen little pieces of it. I haven't seen a whole full episode.
Oh,
okay.
It is,
but you're at least aware.
Yeah,
you're aware of what.
Yeah,
okay,
the conceptual framework. So it is wonderful. It is this like beautiful microcosm of society that allows for like the best research. Like, I'm telling you, it's better than a guide documentary.
Social experiments.
It is a social experiment.
Oh yeah,
you can learn so much
to the highest degree.
So I am addicted. I cannot get enough of it, and I love it. And on Love is Blind, everybody says, this is the day I've been waiting for my whole life. And this is the person I've been waiting for my whole life. And this moment is finally here. And they really believe it. I can see that they believe it. Like, I can see wholeheartedly in their bodies that they believe it. And I just...
people are crying. People are crying saying this stuff too. Like so emotional.
Like, no disrespect, but I don't feel that way. I've never... Like, what do you mean you've been waiting your whole goddamn life? Like, that's it?
I love you though, Dee.
Right, I love you, but like, what? Like, no, I have not been like searching forever for one person and like have an idea, to be dreaming of a wedding a day.
But then dreaming of like a type of person though. Like, how many people on that show? Because, right, the whole premise, for listeners that may not have seen this show, the whole premise is that they bring together a whole group of people, and then they put them in, like, pods, they call them. So then they go on, like, blind dates, basically. But actually blind. You never see the other person you're talking to. You're sitting in a room, there's a wall, and then there's another person in a room, like, next to you, basically. So you're basically just sitting there talking to a wall. You can hear each other's voices, but you can't ever see the other person you're talking to. So the whole premise of the show is that you're supposed to be matching up and finding a partner that you're going to propose to inside of, what are they there for, 2 weeks? Mm-hmm. So you get 2 weeks to try and find somebody that you're going to match up with. Yep. And then, which
conversation.
Also Aaron, yeah. And I mean, Aaron and I also too are always like, when are they going to have a gay season? But whatever, it's fine. So it's always just hetero couples. It's always hetero couples, and they're always pairing up, you know, whatever. So then, like, at the end of the 2 weeks, it's whoever.
The sexiest hetero couples that have ever
literally lived. the hottest people ever. Like, ever. I'm like, this is not reality.
Everybody looks great in like a fucking thong bikini. Like, that's just not reality.
Yes.
I'm skinny.
It's just not reality.
But I've had a kid. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's body looks like fucking anything that's real. They're all magnificent specimens of the human race.
Very, very much so. Very much so. But as they're like having these conversations.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So, you know, they're not supposed to be seeing the other person. And then they have this like big reveal moment where, like, you know, after they've like been engaged officially, then they're like meeting each other. It's a super dramatic thing. Like, they can't see each other, and then they just like meet down a hallway. And it's like they're both at opposite ends of the hallway. And then the, you know, doors open and they can finally see the person, and then they're like, oh my God. Ah! And then they jump cut to, you know, them being interviewed about, like, you know, how did you feel when you first saw the person? Were they what you expected? And like, invariably, because I've seen all 3 seasons, Aaron is very obsessed with the show as well. And, you know, we've watched all 3 seasons, and every single season there is at least one, if not more than one person that's always like, well, you know, this other person that I was talking to is more like, you know, the depiction of like the person that I actually like and that I would actually prefer going out with. Like, all of these people have made, like, the premise of the show is like, can you make a deep emotional connection that can transcend physical, like, issues, you know, other issues, societal issues, you know, religious, like, race, everything.
Yeah.
Can you make a deep emotional connection that can transcend all of these issues that you have or may run across? 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure there's only, well, where are you guys?
We're done. We finished it.
I don't want to spoil it. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. There's only 2 or 3 couples that are
2.
still from the show, from the first 2 seasons, out of 3 seasons. Now, I'm pretty sure every single season they have at least, 5 or 6 couples?
Mm-hmm.
There's only been 2 couples that have actually stayed married, stayed together, and they're still together right now. Like, invariably, I don't know, in my opinion, and this is probably just the cynic in me, it seems like this is not working, and this is not, their experiment is not working, so maybe it's time to rethink something. But whichever, you know, they always end up like, well, this isn't the person that I thought that I was going to be with. Like, everybody's already built up a picture in their head of somebody that they're going to be with, and it always ties to physicality.
Yeah. So the best part is they have they all meet. So they all like decide to get engaged, and then they all go on a honeymoon together. So they all meet
the contestants
all
together.
the people, and then it becomes a community experiment. But the best episode of every fucking season is when they all see each other, and they're like, "Well, I mean, it really was the top 2. There really were top 2. I really did like the girl with the really big boobs over there. Now that I see her boobs, because I felt like she had boobs through the wall, so I know that she had boobs through the wall. Now that I see the boobs, like, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure one person actually said that too this season. Like, I'm pretty sure that's almost exactly verbatim what they said.
Right. It's
I wonder.
fascinating.
Okay, so there's a show similar to that. It's in Spanish. I forget the name of it. It's very similar, but the people are not like supermodels or anything like that. And they're behind walls, and they talk to each other, and they have like an interview, a series of questions, and it's one person looking for their match, right? So they'll blindly bring down people looking to match, even from the audience. And so they'll keep going and going until this one person decides, okay, I really want to go on a date with whoever is on the other side of the wall because I like the conversation and the questions that were answered. And those seem to work out a lot better than the premise of this one, which is kind of like a refactored version of The Bachelor in a weird way.
It's like The Bachelor and then Married at First Sight, because like the first 3 episodes are like this actual experiment piece. The rest of the season is when they're actually like, now they're engaged, then they have to go move into this like random apartment. They don't even move into each other's spaces, but they like share like a neutral zone basically. And then they live with each other until they're supposed to get married. And it's supposed to be like, 5 or 6 weeks in between like when they meet each other or something, and then they're actually getting married. So it's like kind of a mashup of those 2 types of shows, but it's like, none of this is working, so maybe let's rethink it. I don't know.
But it's also kind of like the real world, because they all live in the same apartment building together. Like,
yeah, because they all live in the same complex.
And they do stuff like they regularly go out as like the girls from the group and the guys from the group, or like as couples, and that adds.
And they all go on their bachelor and bachelorette parties too.
So it adds like
together.
a whole
Like,
other layer of like community like interaction. I'm telling you, it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating, and not because it's so easy to see shit for other people. So I think when you watch stuff like that, if you can also be introspective and see like how you reflect those same patterns, because they're all like basically an archetype. And so you're seeing how the different exaggerated archetypes, and so you're seeing what the exaggerated effect of an archetype looks like on TV, and you're like, oh damn, I've said something kind of like that before. Now I feel like the asshole who I think this person to be, or you know what I mean? Like, it gives you like a little flip perspective. So it's fascinating.
Yeah.
But also, I don't understand how you've been waiting for one person your whole life. And I feel like that's a problem. And I feel like you would be sad, and I'm sorry that people feel that way.
Right? Because just think about that too. And like Erin and we've talked about very similar things, especially while watching shows like this, because it's, this show, we don't watch The Bachelor or anything like that, but Love is Blind, Temptation Island on USA. She loves that one. And I'm like, this is terrible. I hate this show so much. Like a burning passion. But I'm like, you love it, so we're watching it. It's all good. But those types of shows, right? And they all have the same kind of idea. Like, you know, if you haven't seen Temptation Island, like you show up to this island with your person that you've been with, in most cases for quite some time.
I love those ones.
When it's like you just haven't gotten married yet. And, you know, it's like, okay, well, we're not really sure if we like should be together. So we're going to go to this island where we know that there are like a lot of really hot other couples. And like the producers purposely pick people that like they know would probably be a better match than the person that they're with. And then the whole premise is like, okay, you're not with your person, you're split up into different houses. So the guys go on one side, the girls go on the other, and then they have other people, other singles that come in that are like trying to like actively date these people. So it's like, oh, are you going to leave the island with the person you came with? Are you going to leave by yourself? Or are you going to leave with somebody else that you met here? And like, that's the whole premise of that show. And it's like all of these shows, though, they all are predicated on the principle that you have one person that you're supposed to be with and just one match, and that's it. And if you're not with that person already, then maybe it's out there somewhere else. It's like, what is this narrative that we keep telling ourselves?
Or maybe there's a
like,
bunch of fucking
where does that
people.
come from?
And I don't necessarily mean like polygamy. Let's all have.
But different people
50
for each season of the life.
And like different people for different things. Like Dee doesn't have to fucking want to do everything I want to do or like everything I want to like. So like there's like a network of humans that are needed
Friends,
to like
family
to like fully support you as a human. And I don't think we really do that anymore.
No, we don't.
No.
That is
especially now. Like, yeah, okay, we're more social than ever before. We have social media and we have the internet, but like you're not physically meeting people anymore. And yeah, okay, like I mean, take all of us for example. Like we've never actually met in person, which I mean is totally fine because we're all cool with it. But like at one point we all know that we will, so it's not like it's that big of a deal.
But isn't that fucking weird?
But how close we all are without ever meeting each other in person physically.
Right.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Ponder.
I just recently met like a huge group of people that I only met online, and meeting them in person, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not what I expected. But they're so much better in person. Like, holy shit. So that was, really interesting to actually like go through. But I feel like there's something within this topic that we're like etching around, but not quite like got it in yet. And I think it has somewhere to do with like, why are we taught? Are we societally, as a society, just isolating ourselves in some weird way where we're not necessarily branching out and actually creating connections anymore? Because there is definitely something to be said about community, right? Like you need a community of humans around you for each other, right? Not just I'm going to say the one person that you're married with or dating at the time, but I wonder if that sense of community and people is what causes the rifts between people who choose each other. So it's basically what we're doing is choosing someone to just, hang out with all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's it, because that perspective had never occurred to me before. Like, I just feel like clearly something about the monogamous or like single life partner model that we're following doesn't really seem to be working. Based on the divorce rate.
Divorce rates, yeah.
It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like it's quite effective for like it seems like it's like we're working against something. Like for most people, that model doesn't work. So then why are we like championing that model as what's normal when I really don't think that is what's normal at all anywhere? Every contestant on the show is like, I've never had a real example of love before because my
This is
parents are
scary.
divorced and their parents are divorced, and so I don't know what love even means.
Right. I think
So,
this
like-
this topic is so broad though. Like there's like
Mhm.
there's two aspects of it, right? Like the community and kind of like those types of partnerships, but then also like romantic partnerships.
Right.
So I think like
Mhm.
for discussion's sake, like maybe let's tackle the relationship aspect because that's kind of like where we're going into.
Mhm.
Like just at least for now.
Right.
Like we'll circle back to the other one, but
And
that
I-
might help with like trying to discuss it.
Yeah, and I think what Alex said is like important because maybe it is this lack of community that leads to the, you know what I mean? Like maybe monogamy wouldn't be that hard in terms of like a life partner relationship wouldn't be that hard if you had adequate community. But
And
so
I would just want to add is like when I would say that I know a lot of people who go into a relationship and they just stop talking to their friends and family completely, entirely.
Mhm.
And then you're like, well, do they even have friends? Like, I remember growing up and I'm like, Matt, who's my dad's friends? You know, like, who are those people? And like, later on in life, I see a couple of people show up and I guess those are my dad's friends. I don't know. But it's not like a reoccurring thing where they go and hang out, if at all ever. Why? Or the same thing with my own mom. She would hang out with her own families because they were right there. However, she didn't have friends either that she would hang out with. So like, what's up with that?
right. It's like completely, and so then so to me there's this placement of a hierarchy where marriage is this thing and this relationship that's like more important than any other relationship in the whole world. The most important relationship you could have is a marriage. I'd be willing to guess has something to do with Christianity, but I mean, I'm sure it was happening before that. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's roots. These things always go back way, way, way further. But I think the patriarchal version of marriage, where your wife was like your property and like you could vote, like you got an extra vote because you got to vote for that chick who cooks for you, and so there was like there was a winning party. There was a winning party in the institution of marriage as we know it today. Like marriage is really a business, and initially it was really like to help you get ahead.
Spiritual?
I mean,
yeah, don't forget the dowry though too, like that you get from her family, like
right, like
sweeten the deal,
right, like yes, it's a religious ceremony, so it's the church and God are consecrating this marriage or what have you. However, there's like all this money that comes with a wife. There's extra rights because you have a wife. There's fucking tax breaks because you have a wife. There's all of these things that make marriage like political and legal and financial, and it's like a business.
Capitalistic.
Right. And so there are people like there is a profit to be had from marriage being the most important thing. I mean, even on a very basic level. Like, you know how much people pay for these fucking things? People take out fucking mortgages on houses and like, what?
It's true.
You know what I could do with like $50,000? Fuck if I'm gonna spend it on a bunch of alcohol for my family to drink. No way, no. Like, are you out of your goddamn
BYOB, man.
Are you out of your goddamn mind? No, I shall not.
And well, then the other sense of it too, of that like the only like health insurance, like you have to be married to like have somebody on your health insurance, but that marriage can happen in less than 24 hours and end in less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
But so like the actual
yeah.
like having a wedding is a business. Like being married is this. So there's all of this. So if we don't all want to search for one person our whole lives, then like think of the fucking industry shakeup we have.
Well, and you think too, and this has kind of been dancing around my brain for a second, but the idea that we have with children, right? Like, because trying to think about, like, where is this being ingrained? Like, where is this, like, so you've got your family, maybe you have the perfect vision of parenthood because your parents never got divorced, but then, maybe somebody else has, like you were saying, Mia, like, oh, my parents have always gotten, everybody in my family has been divorced or something like that. So I don't know what love means. But then here comes society with, like, Disney and other, I mean, Disney is like the most egregious example of this, but then you have, like, it even continues through, right? Like, because then we have shows like The Bachelor, Bachelorette. We have shows like Love is Blind. We have shows like Temptation Island or whatever. We have all these shows that then continue to, like, continue to, adopt and, like, spread the idea that there is, like, a prince or princess charming, and, like, this is, you're only supposed to have one person, and it's all fairy tale. What are you guys laughing about over there? What is it?
I think that Dee should
share with the class.
I think that Dee should share her perspective on this with us, because I think probably
is it different?
Yes, I think because I think
please.
No, but I think it's valuable to hear, because I think, especially for myself, especially in the energetic space I'm in right now, it comes off as, like, my philosophy can come off as though, like, well, if we all just handled things this way, it would be better. But that's from, like, a lot of thought and a lot of contemplation of different things. But explain, like,
well,
how
remember
you
what we started
felt.
this podcast for, though, right? Like, we're all supposed to be sharing different perspectives. So if you have a different one, share it, Dee.
So, I mean, it's shifted. I mean, obviously, like, when I first went into this relationship, like, so I was previously engaged. So, obviously, at one point, I was planning on for the big wedding day, blah, blah, blah. Clearly,
Mind you,
that
for
did not
anyone
work
who
out.
does not actually know me personally, I have been engaged and I broke it off, and I was married once, and I got divorced. And now I live with Dee.
So anyway, so I think when I had gotten into this relationship, like, originally we had talked and said, like, about getting married and doing all the things. And you kind of went along with it for a while. And then was like, no, I don't think so. Like, because we actually got to the point where we went and we're actually looking at engagement rings.
I do like jewelry, I will say. So I do like that tradition. I do that did seem, you almost got me there. Because it was like, really, we had the budget for like a fucking bomb ass ring, and I can't, like, something that shiny is very hard for me to walk away from. Anyway,
continue. Right. So that was. So we had gotten to that point, and then there was just, like, a lot going on. Like, we were at one point talking about building a house and everything too. So it was just, like, a lot. So she was like, no.
And I said, nope, we're not doing anything. We're going to sit still.
So then, like, more recently, when I've, like, brought it up in a more joking manner, this is now when the conversations have started around, like, no, like, why does it matter? And, like, really, as far as, like, why does getting married matter? And, like, really, what does it change about a relationship and how it works? It really doesn't. Like, for most people, it doesn't change anything.
Or does it, because there's this added pressure of...
Right, or that. But, like, in today's day and age, and that maybe this wasn't accurate 30, 40 years ago, like when our parents, for instance, got married, but most people these days live together before they even get married. So the concept of, like, you're not having sex with somebody before you get married, you're not sleeping in the same bed, you're not living with them, like, all these things, like, most people are doing all of those things before getting married. And so when you get married, what does it change other than being a piece of paper? Nothing. But it does change things for things like we previously said earlier, health insurance. Like, you can't get health insurance if you can if you're just living with somebody in a domestic partnership, but then you have to give prove, like multiple types of documentation that, like, what you have to be on a mortgage, you have to have all these financial dependence upon each other to prove, which I understand, but
But
also
also,
there's
lots
married
of
couples
married
who
people, like-
completely do not have their finances together. So like
Mhm.
there's no commonality in all of it. And so on that aspect of it, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make a difference to me. For me, I think it was just more of like, for me, I think it was something that was so like societally ingrained into me. Because like when I to the point when I got engaged, all of my friends at the time in my inner circle were all doing the same thing. So like it was just wedding after wedding after engagement, and then not moving on to the kid phase of it all. And so you're like, okay, yeah, so this is what I should do. I mean, and the thought of a big party also sounds wonderful to me. I would spend money on that.
You would.
So I don't know. So like I understand her perspective, and I've kind of come around to it more. The like aspect of like the one partner forever, like I kind of get behind like you could find your one person that could be yours. I do also understand that those circumstances can change. So like right now I could say like this is my person forever. But as we've talked about before, like if we both don't continue to grow in the same direction, then there's the potentiality that won't work. And if we're married or not, what does that matter? It just makes it a little harder if you're married, and it costs a little bit more and takes longer to officially break it up. But there's still doesn't really stop people, I don't think, from ending relationships. Just makes them a little bit more sticky. But I think is as far as like I feel I get a little bit more like ugh, feeling when I hear things like you can't find that one person. But I also have now come around to think that like that one person should not serve everything that you need.
Yeah.
Like they're going to serve a lot of those
like,
things that you need. They're going to understand you the most probably out of a lot of people, but like that person shouldn't be your therapist. That person shouldn't be your, this, or like that's what your friends are for, or an actual therapist is for. But so like, but then not placing that relationship on the pedestal, like so that it is just as important to be with those other people who do those other things for you than it is. And like, that's okay. And that doesn't mean that you don't want to be around somebody or anything, but so that's like kind of how my perspective is shifted. And it's hard for me to fully embody at times because some of it's very triggering for me from like past life abandonment component of things. So that is a shift that I've had to make as far as it not being a trigger for me and understanding that like what doesn't matter. Like if you look back at every other relationship you were in and you're like, this is the one, and if it ends, it's going to be the worst thing of my life, and then you're like, here I am and I'm fine.
And I didn't die and we're okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like right now I would say if like we broke up, it might be the worst thing of my life and I would never make it again. But like my record prior to now is pretty good. So like you get through it.
Well, maybe the emphasis of all this like religious and societal connotations on what it is to get married is what bogs and confuses things, because really at the end of the day it's whatever you and the other person want to make it to be, and it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks or what everybody else wants to practice. Yeah, there are traditions, but traditions doesn't truly actually define if you would want to go into some sort of union of what that may mean for the individuals going through those phases, right?
Exactly.
I remember like when I did, because I did have kind of a large party. I'm Hispanic. I like parties. I didn't do the route where you have like what do you call it? The person that talks, the priest person.
The officiant.
The officiant. Yeah, my officiant was like my best friend from like pre-K. I just called him up, was like, hey, do you want to talk about blah, blah, blah? And he's like, yeah, let me do it. Okay. Or, already I made it in a way that was special to me and made absolutely no sense to everybody else.
Right.
And I didn't give a shit. And I think that's
as well you shouldn't.
Yeah, I should give a shit. Like, okay, I had what was that weird thing that we did? My sister said a poem from Velveteen Rabbit at the beginning of everything. And I was like, okay,
I love that
cool.
story.
And then well, instead of like piano music, you know, the dun 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 dun,
yeah.
it's like, man, fuck that shit. I'm gonna pick some other music. I think my friend picked some jazz, some old jazz man that I had never heard of before. I was like, all right, let's go with that. So, you know, yeah, people got pissed. Like a lot of my family members were like, "Where's the priest? Why isn't this in the Catholic Church?" And my mom's like, "Well, I don't know." And I was like, "I don't want to do that. You come here for the party.
Right.
Don't worry about
Right.
everything else."
Mhm. Right, and like that's
But
what you
also,
said.
like you said, like why does everybody care?
Mhm.
Why does it matter
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
that? It's not their wedding.
But that's what the societal like it's like that's what the pedestalizing of it, like it's made
Mhm.
it's this whole thing, and everybody waits
Mhm.
for their daughter and their granddaughter to get married just like they waited for themselves to get married, and then we're all just living our lives for one day.
One day.
I mean,
Yeah.
like so much so too that like when my ex and I broke up, because we were together for a really long time, so my whole family, I'm pretty sure, just assumed that we were going to get married. My grandma, after we broke up, at some point was like, "Yeah, and this is the outfit that I would have worn if you guys had gotten married."
Oh
And I'm
my
like,
gosh.
"Dude, what? Like, what do you?
Whoa.
Huh? Okay, shit, grandma." Like, you know, but very traditionally Catholic, like very like, you know, religious, you know. I know that there would have been people that would have been like very upset and pissed if I didn't have them in a church. But I've also grown up like if I ever get married, it's never going to be in a church. Like, just so everybody's clear, like we're all on that same page. Like, it's not happening in a church. Like, I'm going out in the woods or, you know, on a beach. Like, it's not happening. But, you know, just like you guys were saying, like, it just keeps, you know, changing, you know, as we grow.
Mm-hmm.
There was something too I wanted to kind of talk about, just because obviously our backgrounds in energetics and spirit and things like that. But I think it's really important to remember that we have other people, like Dee was saying, and like we've kind of been talking about a little bit, you know, there are other people that fill a certain aspect of, you know, our cup that we need, you know, whatever. But, you know, you can have multiple twin flames at the same time throughout your life. You can have multiple soul partners throughout your life at the same time. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the person you're actually like, you know, in a romantic relationship with.
And that's another
Right,
thing.
and the concept of like,
but
right.
in the spiritual world, talk about a fucking twin flame. My twin flame is my son. I'll be goddamned if you can find a motherfucking thing on a twin flame who is not in a sexual relationship with you on anywhere on the internet. They're only romantic. Twin flame romantic. That's
only
it.
romantic. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think that's weird. I think that's really bizarre that that's what the only thing that people talk about when it comes to that terminology. But I just also want to add, Mia, that reminded me with the SRT session. Ashley mentioned my mom is my twin flame, and her mom is her mom was hers, and I was like, what is this? What?
But like take that twin flame concept even a step further too, because you can have multiple throughout your life. You know, they come in different seasons of your life. Like, so just like with Mia, like her son is not going to go anywhere, right? Like that is a partnership for the rest of their lives. But that also doesn't mean that she doesn't have other twin flames, or he doesn't have other twin flames that'll come in and out when you need them.
And the relationship changes. Like we're in the middle of shifting some shit right now that's very uncomfortable for me to shift, but I'm working on it. But like the degree of like integration with your twin flame is different. Yeah. I also just had a thing, like I feel, because twin flames are like guiding you or like helping you in a certain way. And so I almost feel like it's like the presence of like, I don't know, it's like a physical way for like another way to drop like breadcrumbs for you to follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, and because the energy between you and a twin flame is like something that you can't really ignore. And so to me, I feel like, I don't know, like I feel like each, like in retrospect, this is very new perspective, but in retrospect, like each of my relationships taught me, my long-term significant other partnerships taught me like so much in that point in time. And so then is that just like this flow of energy that is like your twin flame in terms of like, I don't know, like your higher self communicating with you through people almost?
Yeah.
Yeah, likely, because remember too,
Mhm.
exactly, because we're all reflections of ourselves.
Right.
So at that point, like there are certain aspects and certain pieces of ourselves that need to come through at specific times. You know, like my mom and my stepdad, like they're each other's twin flame. And like my stepdad, like basically brought my mom onto this path. And like as they're going through different things, like that's just kind of like how they're, you know, moving through or whatever. But it's like spirit communicates through him when she's really stubborn and she doesn't notice or recognize that like spirit's trying to talk to her, they'll go to him because his, you know, right. Yeah. And vice versa.
What have we been talking about?
She's looking
lately?
at you because that's you.
I said, like, I'm like, the business is about to take off. I'm about to be making a lot of money and I'm about to be very busy. So this channel is about to close for business. So y'all might want to figure out how to have your own conversation over there. Because it's like a full-time job over here. You owe me a couple $100K yourself for the lifetime channeling.
The another like,
But
couple
that's
other,
part
like,
of the thing. Like, now you do it yourself. You know what I mean?
But that's also part of the aspect of like not everybody needs to be your everything either, though. Like you
No.
shouldn't be doing your work for free for me just because we're in a relationship.
Right.
I mean, I've yet to have her stop working for me, but we're working on it.
We'll get there.
But
Slowly.
also like that dynamic is how we, like, it's always a reflection of, because we are reflections of each other. It's always something for me too.
Right.
Case in point, this morning you came out here and wanted to fucking mix everything. And we had all this other stuff that like needed to be done. Mainly there was no hot water for my tea, which is kind of a big issue, but we made it through. And I was getting really agitated. Like, I was making the fruit bowls in here and I was agitated because you weren't sitting on the podcast ready to go. And I myself was not ready to go. And so I was like, just like observing myself be an asshole for like 20 minutes. And I was like, what is this about?
You notice it's one of the first times I did not come in and engage with you in that state of mind?
Yeah. It was impressive.
I know.
It's probably because I screamed it in your face 4 times on 4 separate occasions prior to that. So it was fresh. It was fresh in your mind to just leave me the fuck alone. But then I realized, I was like, so why am I so mad? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like legitimately annoyed right now. And like, I don't feel like that very much anymore. And I was like, because this is like part of this self-worth thing that I'm like working through. I think we all are just continually working through our entire existences. But right now it is, I'm circling back around again, so to speak. And like, you like want to learn DJing stuff and you love learning DJing stuff. So you're like gonna work really hard at it and you're gonna do it. Even though you're normally like the crazy person who has to have everything done all the time. You're like willing to let go of your crazy for things that you're super fucking passionate about. And like just be all in something for yourself. And I use other people around me as scapegoats for me not wanting to go fully in on shit for myself. So I'm like, well, now I have to do this, and I've got laundry to do, and I have to take care of this, and Ronan's here, so I can't do anything for myself, and I'm never going to have a business. But that's just because I
think that's really important, though, too. Yeah, about, like, the aspect of, like, relationships. Because if everybody is trying to find their one person to fulfill everything for them, what does that leave with you? You know, a lot of the conversations and fights that people have on reality television, dating shows and stuff like that, every single time Aaron and I look at each other and we're like, if you just work on yourself, bro, you'll probably be, like, you'll be fine. Like, literally, I guarantee you, go work on yourself and you'll be fine. Like, That's,
You know,
but you know, when you stop looking to your person or to other people for like the being that fulfilling aspect,
Mhm.
then it comes to you. And just like you're saying, Mia, then that turns into a, okay, what am I doing? Like, what do I need to work on? What is it that I need to, you know, work on within myself or do better?
Right. And like, I want to care about myself enough to like believe in myself and just do something. Like I told you that. I tell you that all the time about like spiritual stuff that you constantly think you're behind. And I constantly tell you that it's taken me years to have this like, you know what I mean? Like thought process, and you go fast. Because you have that ability.
I tell you that too, by the way. So everybody just make sure we're all telling each other that. We're all badass. It's all good.
And that
None of us are more than the other.
Right.
We are all equal. We just have our own differences, which is great.
Right.
But
If we're all
that's
the same, could you imagine how boring that would be?
right.
right, and
That
but
would suck.
and that's where like the other aspect of like the
Really
like the relationship comes in, as like far as like community though too, you know. Like just take us for
Yeah.
example. Like we say all the time, oh my god, could you imagine like what we could get done if we all lived like on a compound together, like in our own houses with whoever,
All in the same house.
but like as a community, if you could actually physically work together and do things like
Right.
like you wouldn't even need the
I would be
outside world.
coming over and cleaning your house all the time because that's what I
mean,
like to do.
But exactly, like how many people?
I literally just thought that today. I was like, we just need somebody to do these things. We need somebody here to do these things because neither of us want to do them anymore.
And the only way you can do that this day and age is make a lot of money to have people come over and clean your house for you and do this and do that, and like, you know what I mean? Like that's a luxury. But if you just lived in a community of people who like, all right, Alex, yeah, you come clean my house and this is what I do for you, like it's.
And raising children.
And there's no money involved. It's just simply like passion.
Raising children. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like some ages, like some people are good at certain ages. Fucking middle school, sign me up. 11 to 14. Shit gets so weird, and
Babies.
I love it. And
babies, man.
90%
Babies, that's where I excel.
See, 90% of the adult population would rather die than interact with a middle schooler. And so if you could just send your middle schoolers to me, and I could send the existential toddlers to you, I would have so much less frustration. And like, you know what I mean? Everybody would be fucking happy.
Yep. There's a reason why there's a saying that it takes a village to raise children. Because that's how it used to be done. Everybody used to do that. Yeah. When we all lived in little pods and we were in our communities, everybody had a certain trade or a certain job that they did, and then everybody else worked with each other to get the rest of it done.
And think about that.
The fact that we're so separate now, that's insane. And then expect perfection out of everybody? Like, are you kidding me?
And I think people have a hard time with sometimes, or like what I hear sometimes in response to my theories on things is like, well, none of this is new. We've always had trauma.
Right.
You guys aren't the first idiots with trauma.
Oh my god.
But we don't have a community, which is different, because if you and your mom don't vibe, because a lot of times, like again, like people who are amazing parents, it's just a personality difference between you and the child, and that miscommunication can totally be internalized in a bizarre and traumatic way for a child who doesn't know what the fuck they're interpreting, because we don't teach anybody those skills. So it turns into this like lifelong baggage that you carry around until you're fucking 25 and realize that you've been dragging it around with you, and then you start to unpack it. When if you had like 15 aunts, one of them is gonna get along with, one of them is going to be able to explain that what you need to have explained to you in the way that applies to you. And so then you get rid of all this motherhood wounding and all this trauma around all of this stuff, because it's just explained in your language, and nobody has to feel bad for being who the fuck they are, because now you're alone in your silo and you have two parents, and if they don't speak whatever fucking language you speak as a kid, then you just get traumatized, because the worse things get between you and your kids, the more you hide it from everybody else, because we're all for some reason trying to be Leave It to Beaver, even though we can clearly see that is not actually how we live our lives. That's like what we still feel the need to project. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
I felt that when you were like all these aunts. I was like, oh,
but it's
that's so true.
true
Mhm.
because there and
Mhm.
then people, but and then it's hard, like it's so ingrained that even though like I have these beliefs and I envision this future where this is like a reality, I also like can like it sometimes it like it's so ingrained in you, like it feels insulting when your kid understands or has that connection with someone else. And like I've had that
Yes.
like jealousy, and I know,
Mhm.
and I've seen it in other people and how their kids connect with me.
Mhm.
And like it's so like there's all of these nuances of all of it, and it's just like so deeply ingrained that like everything is supposed to be kept private, like family stuff is like this secret, and then you're all just trauma bonded in secret, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nobody even says it out loud. I mean, talk about autoimmune.
Oh my goodness.
We don't have time for that.
No,
we
we
have
do
to
not
get to
have
our
time for
birthday.
We
that.
don't have time for that conversation.
We do not.
Your
Not-
birthday pedicures.
Yes.